Hello, my name is Bre'Iera Moore, and I would like to welcome you to my podcast. Today, we will be talking about overcoming fears and no longer letting fears control our life. So, for many years, pretty much majority of my life, I'm 30 now, so for at least 2 decades, I have suppressed my emotions, and it wasn't until last year when I had a mental breakdown is when I had to finally face the emotions that I have suppressed and repressed for so many years. It was a way for me to disassociate myself from my environment growing up. I did grow up in a very dysfunctional and volatile household, and the only way that I could survive that little child could survive is not thinking or suppressing my emotions and not allowing myself to express exactly how I was feeling. And this behavior rolled over into my adulthood life when I turned from 18 on up until 30, and I had to sit back and recognize the patterns and see exactly what it is that I was missing in order for me to move forward. And that's something that we will be talking about today. Like, how can we overcome those fears that we're facing and, recognizing the pattern and do the opposite of what we are exhibiting or how we're showing up in the world right now, so we can get to that place of being the person that we want to be. So you might ask yourself, girl, what is emotional suppression or suppressing emotions? So suppression happens when you actively push uncomfortable thoughts, feelings, or memories out of your consciousness in order to deal with whatever situation that it is that you're facing. So for me, like I was saying, I grew up in a domestic violence home. And in order for me to not be in that moment, to literally disassociate, like take my body and my mind out of that experience or those experiences that I was, living through, I literally took myself into another world in my mind. It was just, sometimes it was like, it's like, dang, did I even remember that correctly? Because I would literally just be in a different consciousness in my brain. That's basically that's the word I'm going for. A different dimension in my brain, because I didn't want to hear the yelling, the screaming, and there were times where I heard, the banging and the furniture and things breaking around me. But for the most part, I learned how to push away those thoughts whenever something did occur. And on the other hand, we have repressed emotions. So repressed emotions refer to emotions that you unconsciously avoid, also known as dissociative amnesia. So like I was saying before, I was purposely avoiding these emotions because I didn't know how to process them. I didn't know how to let out that anger or that frustration that I was feeling because of the circumstance that I was in. And I did this for a very long time. It wasn't just me as a child. Like, it translated, it rolled over into my adulthood, and I just simply did not learn how to properly unravel the emotions that I was feeling. Like, we have emotions for a reason. Like, if you're angry, you have to ask yourself, why is it that you're angry? Or if you're sad, why is it that I'm sad? And so you can unpack what it is that you're feeling, so you can be able to express to others, or just simply making yourself aware, like, I no longer want to feel this way. So what is it that I need to do to make sure I don't feel this way about something or a person or whatever it is that you're facing? I had to recognize that this is a learned behavior. This defense mechanism that I picked up on suppressing and repressing my emotions. It was a defense mechanism that I used in order to survive my environment, like I said before. And much of what children learn about behavior and communication comes from their primary caregivers. This is something that I learned from my parents. My parents were not very expressive. The only way that they were expressive was arguing and fighting with each other. That's the only way that they could effectively communicate. And I guess, like, if you throw things around, if you hit a wall or hit a person or something, that you'll feel like you're being heard, and and as well, like, they didn't create that safe space for me to be able to express what it is that I needed, emotionally, or how I needed to be nurtured or cared for. And so I became very out of touch and disconnected from my emotions because of my childhood experiences. And here are some examples that you are likely repressing your emotions, that you learned this from your caregivers, whomever that may be. Is you rarely showed emotions, or they rarely showed emotions or talked about their feelings. If they shamed or punished you for expressing your emotions, told you your emotions were wrong, or denied your experience. So I dealt with this firsthand. I wouldn't use the word shunned. I was shamed for me. I was a crier. I was very sensitive, and I still am sensitive, and that is a gift that I have. And I'm sensitive to other people's emotions, and like, I can look at a person and just like, dang, like, it's something about or that is a gift, definitely a gift. And I saw it as a curse because how I grew up or whatever, but I could look at a person and just see their emotions on their body, like, flowing through their body, on their face. Like, I'm very expressive also in how I express my emotions. Like, people can read me just like that, and I can read people just like that as well. But I used to cry a lot, and I never told my mother why it is that I cried so much. Yes, it was because of the dysfunction in the household, but it was another secret that I was holding back from her, or didn't feel like I had the space, like I said, the safe space to talk to them about why it is that I was so emotional. So at a very early age, I learned to repress those emotions, because I would be not necessarily punished, but she would say certain things to me because I was crying, and I just needed an outlet to get it out. And so I became very angry. I was angry with my parents because of, not necessarily their lifestyle. Well, I guess you could say lifestyle, their behaviors. That's the word I'm going for. I was angry with them because it was like, man, we can't do something else. Like, from a very early age, it was just like, I was just so sick of the screaming, the yelling, the fighting, and just it being so up and down. Like, it was, man, I'm telling you, the tension was as thick as butter, cold butter in my household. It seemed like it was always in shambles. And I just was so mad with them because I knew life could be different based upon like the things that I saw on TV. Like, the way to disassociate myself from my environment, I started watching TV. And then, with TV or whatever, I saw that families act acted differently. And I was just like, why can't my family be this way? You know what I'm saying? Like, why can't my parents behave differently? And so I became very angry with them. And because of whatever reason, we moved a lot, and I was angry with them as well, because it was just like, dang, we can't stay in one spot. Like, why we can't just, it's just like, once I got comfortable with one place, here it is that we were moving somewhere else again. And it was just like very annoying for me. And then also other emotions that people tend to repress are frustration. I was frustrated with my parents' inability to change their actions. I was just, knowing that it could be different, I just didn't understand why it wasn't different for us. And of course, I was sad a lot of the times, because the state that I saw my mother in, and how she was always worried or crying, and just, I wouldn't say pitiful, but it's just her whole aura just read sadness. And I didn't like that, because it would make me sad. And it was just like, I wanted something different for her. And unfortunately, it came at a later time, and it was too late, to be honest. But it's just, I knew that things could be different for her. It's just like deep down in my soul, I just knew it could be different, like all the way around. I never, necessarily didn't look at my dad in that way. I more so empathize with my mother. And I was more compassionate towards her, because she was the victim, or that's how I saw it, as her being the victim, and he was the aggressor. And it was just like, I didn't really have no empathy for him at all, or no compassion. Like, I didn't care for my dad whatsoever growing up. And then I was always fearful because of how my dad would react to my mom and my siblings and I. And so those are some of the examples that I can give you from my life that people tend to repress. And, just always feeling disappointed, because, like I said, I knew it could go differently. And, or sense, shall I say, like really sense that it could be different. And just not getting the outcome, or seeing the outcome it is that I wanted. Because I was like, girl, you can leave him. Like, I'm pretty sure I was saying that to myself as a young kid. Like, and I want to say there was at least 2 or 3 times where I said, girl, I mean, not girl, but like, mom, like, I told my mom, I would go without if we can leave. Like, if you worrying about money, because I've always, like, my mom always worried about money or whatever. And it was just like, I told her probably like 2 or 3 times, like, I will go without if this meant that you could be happy, we could be happy, and we wouldn't have to deal with this no more. Like, really try to encourage her in that sense. But it is what it is. It happened the way that it happened or whatever. And eventually she did get out, but like I said, it was a little too late. I just learned to I purposely avoided these emotions, because I just felt like my parents didn't care anymore. It was like, this went on for some years, and like, at least a decade. And so I was just like, you know what, I'm over it. Like, and like I said, I learned to disassociate myself from my environment. So I would just go into another world, and, subconsciously I would just be there, and I would just stay there, because that's what I felt happy at. And that's where I knew I could be myself, essentially. And so I'm learning to be vocal about my emotions, in order for me to heal that inner child that is broken, those damaged parts of me, so I can move forward. Because think about it, like if you living in anger like that, the anger literally, it's in your blood, it raises your blood pressure, it's in your bones. Like you can just all of a sudden, like your bones start breaking. And it's like, why are these things happening to me? And I had to learn to let go of that anger and that rage, because it was literally no longer serving me in life. I was fighting for something that I no longer needed to fight for. And I had to really sit down with myself and say, what's wrong with you? Like, really, what's wrong? And that's where I was at last year. When I was going through my nervous breakdown, and when I took off a few months from working or just being a part of this world, I had to really uncover my emotions. And then I've also, besides the violence or whatever, I was repressing that I was molested as a little kid. And I repressed that time, that experience, those experiences in my life so much that I don't even remember. I remember the age range, but I don't remember exactly when it happened. And but I do remember what happened in that time. And I had to really come back to that moment and say what it is that I need to take from this. And because I was punishing myself, I was very aggressive towards men because of this. Like I said, unloading those emotions so I could be different. And like I was saying in the last episode, I eventually want to get married and have kids, but that won't happen for me until I uncover some of the things that have tormented me. And me being molested by a family member is one of those things that I had to finally face. I no longer could repress those emotions. I could no longer suppress that experience. I had to face it head on in order for me to live, honestly. Because it always, that time period in my life always seemed to come up at the most inconvenient time. When I tell you, things will be good for your girl, you know what I'm saying? Things will really be going in the direction that I wanted to be going. But it was just out of the blue, I would be hit with that thought. And it was just why is this constantly recognizing that was a pattern, and then figuring out why is this happening? Why does this continuously happen to me? And so, like I said, I had to uncover the good and the bad with it. And then I also felt shame because of me being molested, me feeling like it was my fault, and me feeling like I was the person that did it or whatever. But I had to remove all those negative thought patterns and the negative behaviors in order for me to just really accept what happened. And I didn't want to, I was just sick of showing up as, I did not like the title of the angry black woman. But people have to ask themselves before they can label someone that, or before they can judge someone with that label, shall I say, they need to really ask themselves, what has that person went through? What is that person going through? To make them show up in this world like this. It's not, all of a sudden one day I grew up and I'm like, bam, I want to be this angry black woman. No, really asking yourself, being compassionate and, empathizing with that person is saying, what happened? What's wrong? I know is now I've learned to ask, like, who hurt you? Like really asking, when I do come across hurt people, like, because I was hurt, you know what I'm saying? And 9 times out of 10, when I do ask that question, surprisingly enough, I get a truthful response. And that person, honestly, when I ask people that, they step back and they're like, did she really just ask me that? Oh, yes, she really did. Because the way you showing up at me right now, it's just like you were hurt. And so I feel like it's like, so we need to unpack this really quick, because you coming at me with this negative energy. And if you're going to keep coming at me, and if you're going to be around me with that, like, we need to go head to head and figure out exactly what it is so we can get through with it, because that's what I had to do. And I was very bitter for a long time. I was bitter of and shameful of my experiences, from, growing up in a domestic violence home and, being molested, that the way I was showing up in the world was very negative. And I did not like that person. Like that whole behavior, those habits literally almost took me out, because I just wasn't being good to myself. And, I was essentially disgusted with myself because of the things that happened, things that were out of my control. And I had to remind myself, Bre'Iera, you did not do this. You know what I'm saying? Like, do not put that burden, do not put that load onto yourself. And sitting down and just going through, allowing myself to feel the emotion that I needed to feel in order to heal from it. And I was angry at myself, and I wanted to throw that into my dad's face of, like, if you and my mom wasn't out here acting this way, then this would not have happened to me. Trying to use it as a weapon. That's how I saw it when I was growing up or whatever. And just really, when I finally had that conversation, from me, it came from love. It came from me finally releasing a burden or a load that I have felt for so long, and being loving in that moment rather than the whole negative person that I wanted to be in the past because I was hurt or whatever. And also getting over this silly statement that I'm pretty sure every black person have said to their child: what goes on in this house stays in this house. If my parents would have, like, used this as a way to silence me, I think life for me would have been better. And moving forward, not living in the past or whatever, but moving forward, just knowing that I can share my story. Hence why I have this podcast, and that's why when I ask the question, who hurt you, I'm not coming from a malicious standpoint. I'm literally challenging that person to ask themselves, dang, I don't know what hurt me, to, like, really try to uncover that. Because if you're showing up in a certain way in this world and towards other people, you really need to be careful with that, because hurt people hurt people, and we're just constantly going around hurting each other. And I just no longer wanted to be that person, and just sharing my trouble and my pain so I can help save the next person, so the future generation won't go through the same issues that I went through. So, repressed emotions also can lead to things like denying your feelings, ignoring feelings, avoiding conversations, avoiding touch, and distrust. So for me, definitely the top two: denying my feelings and ignoring my emotions. For the longest time, I would never say what was wrong with me. Like, from the earliest moment that I can remember, earliest time I can remember, I would never, ever, ever, ever say out loud, Bre'Iera feels X, Y, and Z because of X, Y, and Z. I have never done that in my childhood. Never did it. And I didn't start doing that until recently, honestly. And it's so freeing when you're able to get your emotions out and just say, I feel this way because of this. And and I'm not saying putting the blame on anyone or anything like that. No, I feel sad because I didn't do this or whatever, however big or small it is. But for a very long time, I was lying to myself. Just flat out lying to myself and not facing what it is that I needed to face. And I was also avoiding the talk with my parents that I needed to have. Unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to have that conversation with my mother because she passed when I was 22. So approximately 9 years ago, she passed away. And so I never had that talk. And, finally I was able to have that talk with my dad earlier this year and just telling him, the surface level of like, because of this, I felt this way. And, and that was so freeing in that moment, in that time of doing that, because I just felt like the muffle was off my mouth. You know how you get like, when you get so angry or whatever, you go bury your head into the pillow and you just scream or whatever. That was me for years. I want to say probably from the age of like 4 up until 30. So 26 years of burying my head into a pillow and just screaming. But to actually hear those words flow out of my mouth, like for me, stop fixating on them in my head and allowing them to move through me and for me to speak them, to articulate that, it was so beautiful. And like, I felt so free doing it. And hence where this podcast came from. Like, just seeing the beauty and knowing that I needed to say something, to speak up, was very nice. And freeing for me. And I could no longer deny the feelings that I was feeling. So denial is a type of defense mechanism that involves ignoring the reality of a situation to avoid anxiety. Basically refusing to acknowledging upsetting facts about external events, internal events, or internal feelings, including memories, thoughts, and emotions. So I had to really stop denying myself that freedom. Like I said, it literally felt like the chains just fell off me once. I had that conversation with my dad and say, you know what? I understand that we cannot go back and change the past, but we do have to talk about the past. And that I no longer could put that on the back burner and say, refusing to talk about the problem. Like, I could no longer do that. And so some of the signs of denial is refusing to talk about the problem, finding ways to justify your behavior, blame other people or outside forces for causing the problem, persisting in behavior despite negative consequences, promise to address the problem in the future, avoid thinking about the problem. So I want to say I probably did just about all those on this, that I just listed. I avoided the problem just because, like I said, I felt ashamed. It was like a rage inside of me, and like I didn't know what I was going to do. I would tell myself or someone that was close to me, I'm like, yeah, well, eventually one day I will talk about it or whatever, but not actually going back and doing it. But so I just really had to, and then, the behavior of being the angry Black woman or whatever, I just had to eliminate that narrative and those ideas from my consciousness and really decide to go the opposite way, basically. So what are some signs of repressed memories? And I'm going to give you a few. So you have strong reactions to certain people. Specific places or situations freak you out. It's difficult to control your emotions. You struggle with fears of abandonment. Friends say you're acting like a child. You often feel emotionally exhausted. You often feel anxious. So what stood out to me from that little list is I always felt emotionally exhausted. I did not know what it was. I didn't know how to explain it. I just always felt mentally and emotionally just drained. And I didn't know it was because I was repressing my emotions. And so as I reflect or whatever, I was always self-sabotaging. No matter what it was, what I did, like I said earlier, like whenever I got to a point where I was doing really well, like accomplishments, like school, work, just trying to move forward and like something, I would just do something. And bam, here comes like the floodgates of negativity. And it was just like, where is this coming from? Like, why is it all of a sudden I'm thinking this way or I'm feeling this way? I had no clue. Like, it was just, I was not self-aware whatsoever. And one of the signs that really stuck out to me was I struggle with feeling abandoned. I never, from me, just speaking from me, how I felt or whatever, I didn't feel like I was loved or cared for or nurtured. Like I said, I wanted to go back to my dad and say, the reason why I was molested because you wasn't there and stuff like that. And that was truly what I told myself for a very long time. And just feel like I wasn't seen or heard. And not having that outlet to be able to do so crushed me. And I carried that on for a very long time. And so emotional abandonment, according to Kibbe McComb, is when other people do not meet your emotional needs, leaving you feeling rejected, unloved, or painfully lonely. That is their definition of emotional abandonment is spot on for me. I mean, absolutely spot on. I felt rejected more than one time. Like, it was just like over and over, like, dang, like, am I never going to be seen? You know what I'm saying? And so just knowing that I am seen, it wasn't in the way that I thought. And I was loved, but it wasn't in the way that I wanted to be loved. And so just really, really sitting down and allowing myself to process emotional abandonment. It was hard. If I'm being quite honest and transparent with you all, it was so hard to face that, because I was like, dang, this has been me for a very long time. But also within that, I just felt like my basic emotional needs were not met. Like I said, because the dysfunction in my family, it was always about my parents rather than about me and what it is that I was feeling or facing, because they had their own childhood trauma that they needed to uncover, but they never dealt with. And so they continue the same generational patterns. But, every child in their formative years need to feel understood or listened to. They need to feel cared for and nurtured. They need to be shown that appreciation. They need to feel accepted and loved. And they need to feel connected with others. And I felt connected with my siblings. It was always the five of us. I'm one out of five, and I was always with them. It was always us against the world. It was us against our parents, going through the trenches. Like, whenever they had their little things going on, like, it would just BS together, trying to console one another. And like I said, all of this goes back to healing that inner child, recognizing that those are my demons that I need to face, and uncovering those demons so I can be a better version of myself. So you may ask yourself, how do I go about healing from abandonment issues? One of the things that helped me was just talking about my first, just acknowledging and talking about my emotions, allowing myself to feel whatever it is that I felt, but knowing that I could not stay in that feeling, especially if it was low energy feelings such as disappointment, anger, feeling overwhelmed, things like that. So doing that and seeking a therapist. I'm not a therapist whatsoever. This is just me sharing my experiences and how I've overcome or how I decided to show up and heal the inner child for myself. But therapy helps so much. For me, I have to work with someone that specializes in trauma, dealing with PTSD, and stuff like that. So also self-care. Practicing self-care can help you make sure your emotional needs are met. And this also can improve friendships and relationships as well. Something you can do like self-care wise is journaling. I absolutely love to journal now. Before, I've always hated writing, but now listen, I write all the time because I'm always receiving revelations from God, and He's just downloading information to me on why it is that I feel a certain way, and just showing me like how am I gonna overcome these circumstances or whatever. So yeah, doing those two things, taking care of yourself mentally and emotionally, physically as well, getting the exercises that you need. Drinking a lot of water goes along with that, just so you can give your organs the most vital thing that it can use, which is water. And make sure you're eating healthy as well. But taking care of yourself, like I said, and going to therapy, unloading those issues that you're facing, and just knowing what I want people to gain from this podcast is that you are not alone. I know it's so easy to feel like you're in this fight by yourself, but God did not create man for man to be alone. You hear me? So if you are feeling this way and you've recognized that you need to change your patterns, go and talk to someone. Find someone that you feel like you can discuss openly what it is that you're feeling, and say, man, I've been dealing with this for X amount of time, and I don't quite know how I can get over this. And just really being intentional with yourself and showing yourself that love, it first starts with you. You know what I'm saying? I can't treat you and you can't treat me. You know what I'm saying? So just saying to yourself, I want to live my life differently. This is what this all is about. Creating a community where we can come and talk with one another, as well as learning to grow and do things differently. So I just ask, and there are, I need to check and see if there are free services out there. I know some people don't have health insurance or are unable to pay for therapists or whatever. But because I know I was going to a lady, it was $150 a session. And homegirl wanted me to come once a week. And I was like, ooh, ma'am, that's a little steep. Let me go and get some insurance first before I can come back and do this. Because, but I did go and get into a program at one of the one of the major hospitals here in Georgia, and it was free. You know, it was a study. I was a participant of a study, but within that study, they taught us how to be resilient. And it was just the confirmation that I needed to know that I was going in the right path because of the conversations that we would have, like the information that they were sharing with us. So just looking up, and one day I literally just Google free, I can't remember exactly what it is that I Googled, but I'll just put in free, let me think about it real quick, free counseling service or something like that, or a study group. That's what it was, study group. And I discovered them, and when I tell you, it has been so beneficial. It was been such a huge confirmation to know that I am heading in the right direction, and that personally I am growing mentally and emotionally. So please just take the time out to take care of yourself. I know that we have 1,001 things to do within a day, but if you don't sit down and take the time out for yourself, who else will do that for you? Honestly, reflect on that and ask yourself, who else will? So just take the time out and to love on yourself, to heal that inner child, so you can show up in this world and be the best person that you can be for yourself. I love you all so much. I hope that you guys have a great day, and thank you so much for listening.